Are you ready?
Ready or not, here we drum.
Ready or not. That's right. Jon Peckman Podcast. Coming to you from Connecticut Valley School of Music and Dance. Beautiful downtown Portland, Connecticut. Come over the bridge. Go through one light. Start looking left. We have shirts, hats. What else do we have? Mugs. You have to stay tuned. Dave's got all kinds of stuff for you. But Jon Peckman Podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube by any chance, like and subscribe. We are here today with an old friend of mine, drummer, Geoff Brown. He's here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, of course. So what's going on?
Just speaking of coming over that bridge, there's an amazing full moon. I think it's a full moon or close to it coming over the bridge tonight. It's astounding.
I'll check it out.
Big moon rising.
Far out. What does that mean?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's a name for it.
Nothing could happen. Yeah. What does it portend? It already happened, whatever it was. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I don't know. There's always something going on. It's the first time it's going to be like this in however long.
Yeah.
Can't keep track anymore. But Geoff Brown, drummer, I've known you for a long, long time.
Yeah. Decades.
Yeah, seriously. I think I first met you or knew you from Creative.
Yeah, it would have to be.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
right,
I started working there in I think 1989.
Oh wow!
So it was probably right around that time. I remember you were playing with Tony Richards in the Canadian band.
Sure. Yep. That would have been then. Yeah. Far out. Yeah. So anybody that grew up even remotely in our area, Creative Music in Wethersfield was the drum spot.
Yeah.
That was the only place to be. The place to be, and Geoff was part of the crew.
It was an amazing scene. It was amazing to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I went there as a kid, before that as a customer, and seeing the store change and evolve over time, and that was such a central hub of the drumming scene and the drumming community.
Yeah, that was the place you went.
Yeah, and so you had in the same building, you had the drum shop.
Mm-hmm.
You had, at the time, back in the day, the Creative Strings, the guitar shop.
Oh.
And then next door, you had the iconic Integrity in Music, which was the record shop.
Yep.
Which, that changed everyone's lives.
Yeah, that was part of the experience, at least for me. You went to Creative, and then you went next door, checked out some records.
It was a band destination. When before I worked there, bands would go there because the guitar players would go to the guitar shop, drummers would go to the drum shop, and everyone would congregate.
And they would go in the record store and break the band up.
Yeah. I mean, it was an amazing hub to be around, and eventually Creative Strings moved out. Right?
Okay.
They got their own shop on the Berlin Turnpike, and then the drum shop took over pretty much that half of the building, and the record store remained on the other side. And the owner was primarily into jazz, but they bought huge record collections from people, so there's a lot of used albums in there all the time. And we'd get all the new releases of anything coming out in jazz fusion. So we always had new music to listen to. We're always getting exposed to new music. We always had stuff playing at the shop. That was as important as anything.
Yeah,
just hearing all that new music and
hot off the presses.
Yeah.
It was quite a scene. Yeah, that was always the routine. You had to go to the record store.
It was such an immersive experience.
Yep.
I mean, the drum shop alone would have been special, but having the record store right next door as well, and just feeding our music addiction.
Yep.
And we'd constantly be playing things in the store, and people would hear stuff, and they'd go over and buy it. People would come to us to what's new. Well, this is new.
Yep. Nothing like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a thing. Bob Gadsden.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, he was the guy behind that shop.
Yep.
He started that right out of college. He was, the shop opened, I believe, in July 1972.
Wow.
And closed in July 2002. That's how I think.
Wow.
I think 30 years to the day, like July 4th. I think right around there, something like that. July 7th maybe. I think it was 30 years. And he was he went to University of Hartford. He was wrapped up in the whole scene that came out of University of Hartford, the Hart School of Music with Al Leapak and that whole family tree that emanated from there. And it was, and in addition to all that was all the clinics, right? That was a huge part of my development. Anyone that was a part of that scene, I mean, we got to see everybody, and in a small, it was no frills in a basement that held maybe 80 people, I'm guessing. You generally no mics in the drums. Like you could reach out and touch the drums and some insane, like there was no air conditioning, so in the summer it was just insanely hot. And these old crickety wooden chairs, and people complain about it sometimes, but you can't replace those memories and experiences.
No, that's the way it is.
And you got to see anybody that did clinics stopped there at some point in the shop. From Tony
Bob
Williams,
knew everybody.
All the legends that were doing clinics. Guys like Steve Gadd never did back in the day, really, but Tony Williams played there. I saw, Dave Weckl,
I was going to say some of the most memorable ones for you.
Bernard Purdy.
Yeah.
So, and some of the best, So, Dennis Chambers, before anybody knew who Dennis Chambers was.
Right.
I didn't know who he was.
Well, you knew that day.
Right. So check this. So Bob would always have these poster boards like in the lobby, advertising the next clinic coming up. Wow. So it was Dennis Chambers, and I'll never forget this. And at the time, his billing was, I think he played with John Schofield and Thomas Dolby. That's how he was billed. Which
I love Tom. I didn't even know that. I love Thomas Dolby.
And I don't know. He probably played hi-hat on one track, right? The way Thomas Dolby would have. Right. I mean, you don't ever hear that connection, but that's how obscure. And that was what Bob was reaching for. Like, well, what's a name people might know to promote this guy? Because who's Dennis Chambers? Well, Tom. He must have had like one credit on one tune. What year would this have been? This would have been. We had Dennis a few times there. This maybe 1990. I'm trying to think.
Wow.
I can't remember if I was working there or not at the time. It was either late 80s. Again, I started there in 89, 90. So it was right around that time. Or if I was.
Oh, gotcha.
Or I could have been when I was still a customer.
I know what I didn't realize that. I'm a big I'm a big Thomas Dolby fan. I know this track. I didn't know it was him.
Is it just like one track, probably?
Yeah.
I wonder if he even sounds like him.
You know what? It's kind of like, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
So he was affiliated with P-Funk, with George Clinton.
Right.
It was that crew. Thomas Dolby.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. May the cube be with you.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah. Okay. So
that makes sense.
So that's all we know. Like John Schofield and Thomas Dolby, never heard of Dennis
Brecker
Chambers
Brothers.
At the time.
The whole 9 yards.
But most people didn't know him at the time.
Yeah.
So he comes in and
so they expect to see Thomas Dolby's drummer.
And there was like maybe 30 people there.
Whoa.
It was like because no one knew the name.
Sure.
So you trusted if Bob was putting on a clinic, it was going to be worth your time. But okay, there's someone coming next month or whatever. This guy, who is this guy? I think I was probably sitting front row, of like 3 rows of a few dozen people, and Dennis comes in and sits down and starts playing, starts with a solo, and I realize in the first 10 to 15 seconds, I don't know who this guy is, but I am watching one of the greatest drummers in the world. There was no question.
Imagine that. Yeah.
And that's happened a couple times in my life, and those are great experiences when you see someone that undoubtedly this is one of the best in the world.
You're seeing chapter 1
and
the prologue.
Exactly. You know it, and it's that thrill, and
that's so cool,
and it's frightening, and it's inspiring, and it's intimidating. And he was just a force of nature, just just the ridiculous powerhouse singles. And I remember the Zildjian snare drum that Bob helped develop between Noble and Cooley and Zildjian was just coming out. It was like maybe in the prototype stages, because I remember Dennis was playing it, and that's a particularly loud and powerful drum to begin with. Yeah. So he thought, well, he's going to try it out for the clinic. So he was there behind his Pearl kit and that Zildjian snare, and it was just it just threw you back. It was just completely insane. And that is, so he was there a couple of times. I don't know that is the same clinic. That stuff is on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Back then you weren't supposed to be recording anything. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but now everyone records everything.
Sure,
everything's out there. But that one
probably a camcorder.
I think some guy, we were allowed to record stuff for us in house. Sure. But years later, someone posted it on YouTube, and it's
wow.
Some of that stuff is there. It's just That's ridiculous. Cool. I think actually it was the follow-up clinic because Jeff Bevar was there.
Yep.
and Doug Wimbish,
Okay.
who had
Yep.
played with Dennis back in the day.
Yep.
Dennis was telling stories. He would take the train up when he was younger from Baltimore, come
Right.
up to play gigs in Hartford
Oh, wow.
with Doug Wimbish.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they went,
Wow.
so they went
there's
way,
a
way
Hartford
back.
connection
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. He was
That's
playing
cool.
in Hartford with Doug, and so Doug
Wow.
was there and brought his bass and amp, and they set up and played, and
Wow.
and there's a record of that.
In
yeah.
the basement of.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
Pretty cool. What other things stand out to you?
Of that
Yeah.
of that era,
Yeah,
that store.
the clinic.
Clinics. I mean, when Dave Weckl came around for his similar situation experience, I'll back it up a bit. But when I was still a customer there, Dave Weckl was doing a clinic at University of Hartford. I
Okay.
remember the Percussive Art Society
Yep.
was doing, like they do the regional shows, the PAS shows. So they were
Sure.
doing a Percussive Art Society day at University of Hartford. And again, someone said, "Oh, you should see Dave Weckl." And at the time,
Yeah, who?
yeah, this is like pre-Electric Band, pre-Chick Corea.
Wow.
I think one of his big, billing credits
Sure.
was like he had played with, I think, Diana Ross or something,
Okay.
like on
Yeah.
a track of her or something like that. And so me and my friends would go down.
Yeah, you're like, whatever.
Yeah, and we're University of Hartford, and people are doing their clinics, and
Yeah,
here comes
yeah.
Dave Weckl. All I know, he's some guy from New York, a studio drummer from New York that
Yeah,
had
yeah.
like played with Diana Ross
Yeah.
and maybe Thomas Dolby for all I know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
so same thing. He comes out, and it's
You're like, oh,
like,
this dude.
okay, the first thought is, I'm thinking, if this is the like representative of what a New York studio drummer is,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, because I mean, it was
Yeah, right.
incredibly
Yeah, yeah.
intimidating. And it was the first time I'd seen someone in person in the same room, because he was very influenced from Gadd,
Yep.
and there was still a lot of that in his
Sure.
playing. So to see someone play with that kind of Gadd-like feel, and in relatively up close in like
Yep.
a smallish auditorium, it just completely blew my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And he had handouts, and
Yep.
he did a great clinic, but I never forgot that.
Yeah, yeah.
It was that same kind of experience. Like you're seeing someone, you
Mhm.
realize this is not your normal musician.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And again,
luckily.
yeah,
Well, like you say, at least now you're
Yeah.
thinking, none of us measure
Yeah,
up against
yeah,
Dave Weckl
right.
or you're.
yeah, and Dennis Chambers.
Yeah, this
those
isn't
the-
just one,
yeah.
some rando.
Right.
You're like, these are the
right.
guys.
I don't feel bad being completely blown out
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
water by
right.
those guys. It's like,
Right.
wow. But
Right.
you knew it was undeniable. You knew you were witnessing
Yeah.
something incredibly special.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then so to fast forward that a bit, so then we had him at Creative. I think so this is post Chick Corea Electric
Yeah,
Band,
sure.
when the world kind of knew like who Dave
Yeah,
Weckl
yeah,
was,
yeah.
and he just put on a phenomenal
Yeah, yeah,
clinic, and
Yeah.
that was great.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I guess at the time of maybe well, I don't know, maybe for you there were more, but for me it was like those handful of years, it was the big three. It was Vinny, Dennis
Yeah,
Chambers,
yeah.
and Dave Weckl. And
Sure.
Dave Weckl was the guy I related to his playing the most.
Sure.
That was my guy. 'Cause
Sure.
It was like super Gadd.
Yeah.
You know,
right,
it was
right.
like next level Gadd,
Yeah.
and that was kind of
Yeah. And then we had Vinny as well.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
and
Jeez.
same thing. Just I mean, he was, but at that point everyone knew who Vinny was. So I
Right.
have a great story to follow that up with. So
Yeah.
this again would have been early.
By the way, if you're not a drummer, you can just tune out. Now.
Yeah,
Like we're
so-
going with
yeah,
this
yeah,
is fine.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
good. Good.
yeah, this
don't
is
need anything.
drum talk.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah, everyone's on
Vinny who?
Right.
Vinny Barbarino?
Yeah.
We know who we're
They're
talking
all
about.
first
Just-
name
yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Dave,
yeah,
Dennis,
yeah,
Vinny.
yeah,
If you don't know, you need to find
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
So Vinny Colaiuta. So he had already been. This would have been the early '90s,
Mm-hmm.
and he had already done all his legendary work with Frank Zappa and a million other people. People knew who Vinny Colaiuta was.
Right. Didn't get the Sting gig yet.
Right,
That
right,
was-
way before that. So it's interesting to group those three guys together, because what woke up a lot of people and what put Dennis Chambers on the map for a lot of drummers was the first Buddy Rich memorial concert.
Right.
And when they did that, though, so
It was the three of them.
It was the three of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
just-
no, it wasn't Dennis. It was not. It was
Yeah.
It was oh yeah, it was Gadd. It was Gadd.
That's right.
Gadd.
You're right.
And Dave Weckl and Vinny Colaiuta.
Right.
And the other performance trio was Dennis Chambers, Louis Belson,
Oh, right.
and Greg Bissonette.
Okay.
But that was the first time a lot of people, like in the drumming community, got
Sure.
to see Dennis, like just
Yeah. Like,
light it up.
Who's this dude?
Just
Yeah.
just light it up. But we already knew. Like we
Yeah,
had
yeah,
already
yeah.
had our faces blown off.
Yeah.
So So Vinny, early 90s, Vinny comes to the store, does the clinic, but that like sold out in like we couldn't even advertise it.
Sure.
It was like word started spreading and it was sold
yeah.
out in a half an hour, and then we had a bunch of angry customers at us that couldn't get in. But
what are you gonna do?
80 people in there, and there was literally no more room. So
just tell them wait 30 years. You can see it on YouTube.
So he comes in, and I remember the same thing. I think with one of the newer Zildjian drums, the shallower one was now coming out as a prototype. Vinny was going to play that. Sat down, and we had this white Yamaha. There's a story for that too. This is all connecting. This is great. There's all these connections.
We have to talk about you at some point.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we ordered in a white Yamaha recording custom kit for Vinny. This huge kit.
Sure.
With 5 toms and a rack system and all this
Sure.
stuff. So Vinny comes in, sits down, and just from like the get go, just there's no warm up. There's no easing into it. It's just 0 to 90. Boom, single stroke rolls, just this furious onslaught, just assaults the kit. Kit, everyone's blown away, of course. It's Vinny, great clinic. Afterwards, Vinny's hungry. Most of these times, there wasn't many options, especially back then, after hours at a diner. There was a Denny's down the road, and a bunch of us, we go to Denny's. So it's like me and Bob Gatzen and Vinny Caluta and Frank Bellucci, who was a great drummer from the New York, New Jersey area, had come up for the clinic because he knew Vinny, and he was an amazing technician, just a great guy, great drummer, played lefty traditional grip.
Oh, wow.
And he had done a clinic at the store too, but he's a guy that studied with Joe Marlowe and Jim Chapin. He had all that Moeller stuff now, just amazing. He was the first guy ever. Frank Bellucci, just as a tangent, the first guy any of us back then saw like doing double stroke rolls and double pedals, Swiss triplets and double pedals. Just his feet could do what his hands could do.
Yeah.
So that ties into the story. So we go to Denny's with Vinny. It's probably midnight or something like that. Vinny can't stop drumming. He cannot. He's got his sticks. He's banging on stuff. And he's like, and he says like, I'm seething right now. Like he just did a clinic. Most people just are done. He's like just getting warmed up. He can't stop playing. So he's playing on the table.
Wow.
And the chef or the manager comes out. And he wasn't angry, but he actually had a sense of humor. Comes out with this big stack of newspapers and slaps it down the table. He's like, use these.
Yeah, right.
He didn't want his table getting banged up. He didn't want the noise. And so we're sitting at this table, and we all have sticks, and Vinny's playing, and I'm playing, and Frank Bellucci's playing, and it's like nuts. This is completely insane.
That's wild.
I mean,
hyperactive child.
I'm
learning as we get older that we all have problems.
He couldn't turn it off. He couldn't make it stop.
Wow, that's great.
It was just absolutely nuts to think, in this day and age, that would be up on Instagram and YouTube. You'd have documentation. I have nothing but memories.
Right.
But it's amazing.
That's heavy, man.
And he was, and there was no, I was at the time in my 20s, I guess.
Yeah.
Mid 20s. I'm nobody. And Vinny was we were just drummers hanging. He was just totally cool with hanging with drummers, playing, and we're walking out of this place, and he and I were the last two out, and we were talking about some rudimental thing, and he asked me to show him, and we're sitting it's an actual memory, like this actually happened. We're standing in the lobby of Denny's. Vinny's holding like a real field practice pad, and I'm playing on the practice pad, showing him some particular thing that we had talked about. Like, is this real life?
Yeah. That's heavy. Meanwhile, there's people walking by that have no idea that anything's happening.
Like, so I mean, that's just I could tell dozens of stories, all that came from that hub of creative music, and having those clinics there, but just how great it was seeing, and that. So to tie into that, so I was playing with, I was going to be performing with Bob at the NAMM show.
Okay.
I think that year, which usually is like January, February, and I believe this clinic was just maybe a month or so before that. So I was nervous about going out to NAMM. I'd never been, and how we were going to be.
I still have never been.
You got to go.
Yeah, I will.
If you haven't been, you got to go.
Dave, every year.
I mean, you go a few times, and it's like, okay,
sure.
It can be a little insane. But so Bob Gatzen was associated with Noble and Cooley Drum Company. He was designing all their drums for them. And they had a booth, and back then there was a lot more performance at NAMM. You could go to a NAMM show, and you'd see all the big guys, all the big artists and endorsees. They'd all be performing. They all had sound booths. That changed a lot over the years. There wasn't nearly as much as that, for a number of reasons. But and Noble and Cooley was a small,
Yeah.
independent company, and out of Granville, Mass. And Jay Jones was the owner. He still is. And they had a booth, and so Bob and I were going to be playing at the booth, demonstrating drums. And Bob had all the kits mic'd up, and there's like a headphone station. You can stand outside the booth.
Boy.
You're in like a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous. I wasn't so much intimidated because I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to NAMM, and it's just, it's massive. It's the Anaheim Convention Center, right across the street from Disneyland. There's tens of thousands of people there. And that experience, though, with Vinny Colaiuta before that eased my nerves a great deal. I thought, if I can just sit there and hang out with Vinny Colaiuta and we can play drums together,
you're in.
Who else is going to intimidate me?
Right.
I don't care who I'm going to run into out there, because...
And then you look, and Dennis Chambers is staring at you.
Better. On par with that. So there was an experience like that. So at one point, I'm at the show, and there's a lot going on, and everyone's milling about, and people are saying hi and taking breaks. At one point, I was there by myself in the booth, and who walks in? Jeff Porcaro.
Oh.
And he knew Bob and from before that.
Oh boy.
And it was great. Like, we just had this.
That's heavy.
I'd never met him before, and we had just this. He was just so genuine, so down to earth, so cool.
From Hartford.
From Hartford.
Sure.
Hartford,
There's
Wethersfield.
connection.
Yeah. So Joe Porcaro.
Imagine that.
Those guys all came out of the Al Lepak.
See, this is what I'm saying. We're telling the story.
Right,
too.
right.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So Al Lepak, the guy that ran, the godfather of drumming and percussion in the Hartford scene, and Joe Porcaro came from that school.
Right.
Emil Richards, all these huge guys that migrated out to L.A. and became integral part of that scene. So there's Jeff, and I still actually I have a cassette of this encounter somewhere, because I had a little handheld cassette recorder to record our performances. And when Jeff walked in, it was click, because I thought maybe he was going to play, right?
Oh man!
And I ended up just capturing this dialogue, and it was
like, who's that kid?
And he was so after having a great experience with Vinny back at the store, and then here I am at NAMM with Jeff. I'm like, no one's going to intimidate me, because I don't care, because these guys are so cool. And the kits were set up close together, and Jeff wanted to get behind my kit because he wanted to check out one of the snare drum there. And he was being very careful. He was afraid, like, move. This is how polite he was. He didn't want to move anything around. I said, it's okay. You can move
Jeff
that drum.
Porcaro, you could.
And this little I did this 13-inch snare off to the side, and he says, no. He goes, no. I was watching you before. You were taking a long time setting it up, so I don't want to interrupt it. I'm like, wow. You were watching me set up. I guess you were just watching us play, and you don't want to you don't want to invade my space. You're worried about like, kick the kid over, go Keith Moon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah. Light me on fire, whatever. Yeah. We're good. We're good.
But it was just, it was amazing. It was an amazing, amazing.
That's cool. So you get to learn for real, because they're treating you like a peer.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was.
It should be.
Yeah. Right. Why shouldn't it be? And if guys like that are going to treat you in that way, then who is anybody else not to?
Right.
So
they've already been there.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. Wow. That's heavy.
It's fun. Yeah, no. I was going to say, I've found, I always joke with friends of mine that I have almost too many stories like that, where sometimes I feel like I'm Forrest Gump. Like, I don't think of myself as a storyteller,
right?
But because of that store and
you realize you were there for a lot of things.
Yeah, at a crucial time, and got to experience a lot and have some amazing encounters with people. So when drumming conversations come up in particular, I'll have stories that and I sometimes have to stop myself. Like, I don't even believe that I was in all those situations. Like, I just,
that's all right.
I'm not trying to one up people, but I just, if someone says, they have this cool experience with this guy, and and I have a cooler one, but
but anybody that knows you knows you were around, you were there. You're not. You're not telling tales.
I file these things back. I don't think about them until the topic comes up, and I realize, wow, I do have a lot of stories.
I was there.
I had some amazing experiences.
Whoa. Yeah. It's kind of cool. Cool. So tell us where you grew up, how you got into drumming, how it all started.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Connecticut, grew up in West Hartford.
Okay.
So I was born in 1964.
Okay.
I'm 57 now, which is that's insane.
I'm 54.
I mean, I feel like I'm
54,
talking about someone else when I say that.
Yeah.
But
It is weird.
I mean, but one of my mantras is age is a myth, and I could go on for hours about
Sure.
like health and nutrition and
Sure.
exercise and all that stuff.
Sure.
But yeah. So yeah, somehow I was born that long ago. So now, do you remember your first experience with drumming, or your first the first spark? Any particular moment?
I do actually, but it's weird. Weird.
I can tell you mine, or you're.
I'll tell you mine real quick.
Yeah.
The Beatles. Birthday. I heard the drum break. It's like, and it's just boom, dack, 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 just that. And I used to tell my parents, put on Smack It. That song that goes smack it, smack it, smack it.
This is a record your parents were playing?
Yeah, they had the White Album.
Yeah.
It came out when I was like 1 or 2. And so that was the first thing that I noticed drums.
Yeah.
It's like a drum break. The drums are really loud. You could hear what they're doing. And I would run around the house trying to make that sound. It's a snare drum. So I would open up the silverware drawer and just trying to figure that out. So that was mine.
Yeah. So so as a lot of people have had this.
You're like, Vinny Colaiuta was my babysitter. Whatever.
So it was the local marching band. I can still remember. So we lived across the street, more or less, like maybe half a block away from the junior high school.
Oh, okay.
And so in preparation for Memorial Day, their band would be rehearsing during the day, and they would go out and they'd march around the streets, which that's not something that happens anymore. They have maybe on a track, or
I see.
I don't think schools do like just kind of
rehearse
practice
on the
parades
street
in the middle of the day, take over a neighborhood.
Probably not.
So I could hear them coming. And that, that sound.
Oh, sure.
And probably like a Sousa march or something. And just that it's like, it was like being in the 1800s and the circus comes to town. Something.
Yep.
An event was getting closer.
Yep.
I knew that much.
Yep.
Something was happening that I hadn't seen or heard or experienced before, and it was coming towards me, and it was somehow getting closer, even though we're just in this little suburban side street.
Yeah.
And here they come.
Yeah.
And here comes the band in street clothes and literally going right by our house. And I'm standing out there, and I must have been, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old or something.
Yeah.
And it was probably late 60s.
Wow.
And this band comes like right by, and it was just the sound of the drums and just being fascinated by it.
Yep.
And it's so funny that, as my life would go on, marching, percussion, and like rudimental drumming has always been an integral part of my life, and come and gone in different levels. And that was that
because of that
initial spark. And they say like we don't, and it's true of any passion or pursuit, like we don't choose it, it chooses us.
Yeah.
Like I didn't choose drumming chose me.
Yeah,
like, I think of all the instruments that I could have been attracted to.
Yeah, right. You could be a sousaphone player.
Trombone, sousaphone, saxophone, flute, clarinet, trumpets, all of it there. But the drums was just magnetic, and it just blew me away.
Yep.
And I mean, the physicality of a marching band, especially as it gets closer, that approaching event. And thinking back on it, it's funny because, I mean, if it was the 1960s or early 1970s, like a junior high school marching band, they were probably horrible. Let's not kid ourselves. They were probably terrible. And there's a very good chance that none of those kids played music beyond junior high school or high school.
Wow.
But it didn't matter. The infection was there. And the spark had been. Yeah,
but you thought you were seeing grown ups the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. These kids seem so much bigger and older than me, and it was amazing. So here's a good little circle. Let's tie the circle together. So the band director at the time was this notorious, rigid, kind of militaristic guy. He'd snap his baton on music stands. And my sister, who was older than me, a few years older than me, she played flute in band. And I remember, I think he was notorious for making the kids cry.
Oh, boy.
And I think she was terrified about when she was going to have to get to junior high school and have to encounter him. And the band director was just known as Mr. Wiggins.
No way. Are you serious? So, Jay Wiggins' dad?
Granddad, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it was Jay Wiggins, bass player extraordinaire, we both know Jay.
Oh,
I love Jay.
Yeah,
He's one of my favorite people to play with. I love being around Jay. I've gotten to play with Jay.
I'm sick of talking about Jay. Every time we have someone in here, we end up talking about Jay Wiggin. I'm sick of it.
So Mr. Wiggin was the band director, and
wow.
I'll have to confirm with him. I
We gotta get Jay.
believe it was his grandfather.
Okay.
So
we will get to the bottom of this because Jay's been on the list forever.
Okay.
God bless him.
Yeah,
He had COVID. He was going to be a guest. So, dude, I can't. He's fine. But we'll get, everybody talks about. I'm sick. Fast forward. I'm sick of talking about Jay.
But we had this discussion, of course, 40 years later or something. I've forgotten how it even came up. I don't know if I can't remember how we made the connection, but there you go.
Wow.
Right. So that spark was set.
That's crazy.
The force of nature behind that band was Mr. Wiggin that terrified the kids in the school, and then
did he destroy your sister?
I can't remember if she had a negative encounter with him or if he was gone like the year.
Oh boy.
He might have retired the year before she got there. So
yeah, that's heavy. That's so funny. I grew up when I was young, up until 5th grade, we lived on Main Street in Wallingford, and you reminded me I had those same experiences. It was parade day, and I would just go sit in front of my house on the curb and hear the drums coming. Oh, man.
Right.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Well, a lot of people have, I remember years ago, like I think Mono Drummer did a poll and asking people their first experiences, and a lot of people have that marching band experience, but it's usually at a parade. It's usually not in the middle of the day when the band comes by your house.
Gotcha.
And looking back on it, I could see.
It's almost like a private performance.
Right,
in a way.
Yeah. And that force of nature that was, the mighty Mr. Wiggin, he probably didn't ask permission. He was like a drill master. He probably thought, I'm taking this, we need practice for the parade, so we're going around the town. There was no police escort. There was,
wow.
I mean, there was a fraction of the traffic back then too, but just,
wow.
you probably,
we're going to do it.
You probably wouldn't be allowed to take kids off school property these days. Like, who knows? But we're marching through the town and we're practicing for the parade. And,
wow.
And I remember a couple, I think, other years, looking forward to that.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it was, and so
that's crazy.
The Wiggin connection is just too beautiful. Right?
Wow, that's heavy.
So can I tell you another story about that?
Sure.
I just on that era alone. We good on time?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're halfway there. Okay. So leave room for something.
So, because I think about how important, how formative those years were. So this was at Cedric Junior High School in West Hartford. At the time, it was a junior high school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. They hadn't yet moved like the 9th grade as a freshman class for whatever. That's how it was. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So Haig Shaverdian, do you know Haig Shaverdian? He took over the band program there when my sister was there.
Okay.
And he's a flute player. He anybody from like that era in like the 70s and 80s knows of Haig. He was at Cedric Junior High School. Then he was at Hall High School, ran their famous jazz program there. And then I believe was overseeing kind of all the music in town. So he would put on these great jazz and pop shows. And again, that same kind of excitement. He would be doing these outdoor spring concerts. And I can remember as a kid, again, this was been like mid 70s probably, and I was still in elementary school, playing with my friends outside, and we hear like this electric guitar.
Oh boy!
Right, and like, what is that sound?
Rock music is here,
right? Yeah. And it was outside in the summer. They were getting ready for their spring performance, which must have been at the end of the year, like in June or something like that. And you hear the sound of this electric guitar. So we're like moths to a flame.
Yeah.
We need to just see what's going on over here. Get there, and there's a guy playing, and there's a clear set of Fibes drums.
Oh boy!
And we didn't know what we're looking at. Clear drum. We thought that all drums had calfskin heads because the bass drum in our elementary school band had a calfskin head on it. So I think, clear cows? How do you even get a clear drum head? What is this? Clear Fibes drums, just completely crazy. But again, and seeing, I think the guy was playing like a flying V guitar, and like it was just electrifying. It just got into my soul.
Crazy.
And because the band director, Haig Shaverdian was brilliant for putting on like really professional levels, like getting kids that age to perform way beyond the expectations. And so I was an indirect beneficiary of that because I was just so inspired by that.
Because you were there, you were in the area.
Yeah, and then by the time I got to junior high school, and this ties into something we spoke about before. It's all a circle. So the band director there was a guy named Ed Shank, and he was a drummer.
Okay.
Again, another guy that came out of University of Hartford, the Al Leapak School. So how lucky to have a band director who's a drummer, because most times that's the last thing that a lot of, especially back then, band directors, if they would specialize in a couple of instruments, but drums and percussion was
they didn't know,
a side thing. So to have a drummer as the band director, we got a lot of attention. And again, when it came time for like parade season, we had it going on. He was a drum corps guy himself. And one day, and this is, I think, like 1977, he was bringing one of his friends to do a drum clinic for the school.
Oh, boy.
Who was that?
It's got to be Rob.
Rob the drummer. Yeah.
Of the Fibes drums. Right?
Also, Fibes clear drums.
Yep.
So I think I may have asked Rob this one time, but that may have been one of his first Rob the Drummer shows, because it was right around that era.
You are Forrest Gump.
So yeah, right? It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
If not the first show, it had to have been, it was right at the beginning of Rob the Drummer. And he had to put on his clinic performance in the band room for all the kids. And it was, again, that was impactful.
Yeah.
Like that, you see a guy's coming to school and he's got a huge double bass clear drum set.
Yeah.
He's got a giant China cymbal. And
he's going to go nuts.
And he's fun and he's funny and he's playing drums. Like how great is this? This is awesome.
Pretty cool.
Just, Yeah. And that's all just in one junior high school, in one little pocket of time.
Crazy. Yeah. Pretty wild. Pretty wild. Yeah. I hear you. And then, so tell us how you're playing. Who inspired you as a drummer to get involved in drumming the most? Well, when it was your time to kind of start doing it.
So I'd always had that attraction to drums. I remember playing in elementary school. So think about this: a pivotal moment in one's life. It was the first year. Prior to that you had to be in fourth grade to be in the school band.
Sure.
When I was going into third grade, it was the first year they were allowing third graders in.
Oh, wow.
So between like second and third grade, I think at the end of second grade, they were doing, I guess they were auditioning, more testing to see who could get into the band.
Yeah.
So I remember I wanted to play the drums. I don't know why. I didn't know, no one around me played drums at the time. I didn't know anything about drums. I just knew I wanted to play drums. And I still remember this. So again, this is like 1972. And after school or something, they took us into the auditorium up on this big stage. And the band director shows me a list of, and as I remember it was like a list of paper with 3 columns of names. Everyone wanted to play the drums. Everyone wants to play. There's 30, 40 people.
Because they think it's the easiest or whatever.
Yeah, who knows why, right? They want to play the drums. So it was, and this is actually pretty clever. So how do you test second graders on their ability to play? And he had us turn our back to him, and he would clap a rhythm,
sure,
whatever it was, and clap it back. And he just did a few of those, and that's actually a brilliant test for someone at that age. Like, do you have a sense of rhythm?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you have some innate way to relate? Do you hear like a syncopation? You can play it back, and I guess I clapped well enough and got in. Had that not happened,
right,
would I've been discouraged? Would I've not had the opportunity? Who knows?
Yeah.
It certainly.
Well, you were born with rhythm.
I don't think it would have deterred me, but who knows how that trajectory might have changed.
Crazy.
I clapped well enough
yeah.
on stage and got into the band. And then, so to answer your question, so I ended up taking some private lessons for about a year or so from a guy named Carl Oman, who taught locally, and another University of Hartford, Al Leapak guy. But then he ended up moving to Florida, as I recall at the time, because he was getting a gig at Disney. He had since come back but I didn't know that. So I studied privately only for a very short time, like maybe a year and a half. Some snare drum stuff. Eventually I got a drum set around that same, like seventh grade. So
went down to creative.
No, that was a CB700 drum set at Thompson's Music, which used to be a fixture in West Hartford Center.
Yep.
There's a classic. Yeah, Thompson's Music. My CB700 black drum set, 13, 14, 16, 22, massive
nice.
Drums,
Yeah.
Love that kit. And, but So fast forward a little bit. So Ed Shank, the band director that I had there in 7th and 8th grade, was also the director of the West Hartford Drum Corps. And again, another pivotal moment. We knew he was director of the drum corps. I didn't know what a drum corps really was, didn't know much about it. Me and a friend of mine, Lenny Roberto, who was my childhood friend, like my drum buddy. And drummers, you always have that. If you have another drum buddy to feed off of, it fuels your growth exponentially.
Yep.
We were riding our bikes one day through West Hartford Center. We hear drums, of course. Okay, we're going to find out what this is all about. Yeah. We go over there, and the drum corps is practicing, and Ed Shank's the director, and like sign me up, and
just like that.
And that was a pivotal turning point. Of that just poured gasoline on the fire, because now we got to play, and we got to learn technique, and more importantly, I got to learn a lot about music, and I got to learn how to read music. Because what was great, do we have time?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ed,
20 minutes.
So when he would do an arrangement for the drum corps, and what was great too, we were doing cool music. We weren't just doing we were doing very contemporary music at the time. Again, this is late '70s. Chuck Mangione, Maynard Ferguson tunes.
Sure.
We were Firebird Suite. He would give us a score of the entire drum part. So you'd have cymbals, snare drum, tritoms, bass drums, 4 or 5 lines on a score, which was just impractical to read, so we were required to transcribe our part. So I was playing snare drum at the time. So you were just...
That's cool.
You were just simply, writing down what was already there. But what I found, it was an amazing way, perhaps unintentionally, I don't know, to learn to read music, at least rhythms, because by the time, it's served 2 purposes. By the time I'd be done, which would take days, I suppose. It took a lot of time, because these are dense, rhythmic parts and drags and flams and rudiments. By the time you got done transcribing it, you almost had it committed to memory, because you were learning it in slow motion. But as you learn, what is this rhythm? You're writing in as fast as you can write with a pen and paper. You can break down all these rhythms. So something, I could figure out, I kind of knew how to read enough. I could break down, is this a syncope, or what's the underlying rhythm? And there's different ways of writing that. You just, all of a sudden reading becomes easy, because you've already been writing it. You learn all the permutations of eighth notes and dotted notes. So that was a really, really important part of my development, getting a really good grasp of understanding rhythm, reading rhythms, enjoying writing rhythms and experimenting with rhythms, and then getting exposed to... People think of drum corps as maybe limited musically, but I was lucky because we were doing all these different things stylistically. I mean, like Firebird Suite, I got to play in like odd times the first time, playing in nines, and so...
That's cool.
So a lot of my formal education really stemmed through drum corps, but I was very lucky to always be around people that never looked at it just as drum corps, but more musical and expansive.
That's awesome.
Kind of view.
Like, once again, you're there at the right time.
Yeah.
Where it's not just straight drum corps.
Yeah.
Getting into something else.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, that's so then we'll get into quickly a little bit of the whole tabla thing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I admire the most about you, is that you know what you're doing. Like, when you get into something, you know what you're doing, which some people don't know what they're doing, and they're really good too.
Right.
I like people that know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like, I like knowing, not only knowing, but also, you have style.
Sure.
But that's cool. Because, I think that's important to actually know.
Yeah, right.
Because it helps with your playing.
It absolutely does. And
I think so.
And as much as I've always been, rudiments and drum corps stuff, that's something I love and still love doing to this day. But I'm not, when people say, rudiment's important to drumming, I'll be the first one to say not necessarily, because I know of lots of drummers that are great drummers that don't, that don't have a grasp on rudiments, perhaps at all.
Yeah.
Might not even have very good technique, but can still be great drummers and make great music. So it's not essential. A lot of people are bored by it. They don't want I get it. It can seem monotonous, mundane, like practicing a lot of that stuff. If it's not your thing, it's okay. If you can find a way to love it. I loved it just because I did.
Yeah.
And I can't explain
like a
why
certain
I did.
amount of it. I get it.
Yeah. Everyone's going to have different level of interest in that. So I'm not one to say that you need to do that.
Right.
And I've never taken, I don't think, a rudimental approach to my drum set playing.
Right.
It's just almost like another skill.
Yeah.
that I have that happens to apply to drum. I'd be just happy playing on a pad and working on technique the way someone would practice like yo-yo skills or something, or juggling. Like it's a cool kind of thing to do in and of itself. But it's nice that you're having this time with the sticks in your hands. So
definitely.
To fast forward that a bit, so yeah, I did drum corps, local drum corps, through junior high school and high school. Ended up going to DCI, which was another pivotal moment of getting to march with the Bayonne Bridgemen, who at the time were the most legendary drum corps on the planet.
Okay.
They had won world championships prior to that, and under the direction of Dennis DeLucia, who's a Hall of Fame legend in marching percussion, and getting to march, spending one summer in 1984 with the Bayonne Bridgemen was just immensely influential. And I got to march along guys that were world champions. Pete Castellano, the guy that marched in that line, won the individual snare drum championship that year, like a score of 99.5, which had never happened before. And being, spending time with those guys that were already like way, way, way ahead of me, and seeing like, whoa, okay, this is a whole nother level. And another guy that I marched in the line with, and at some point right next to, Jeff Prospery, went on to become another like living legend in drum corps. He went on to be he won individual world championships himself years later, became an instructor, became an adjudicator. He's now in the DCI Drum Corps Hall of Fame. He plays with the West Point Hellcats up at West Point, and so he's made his life out of rudimental drumming. And I see him every now and then. We cross paths with each other. And again, that was just a connection that I had from so that was another hugely influential thing. So sorry to get all wrapped up in just that. So to fast forward, so I'd always been fascinated by Indian percussion. Didn't really know what I loved the sound of it, didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And eventually got another just random kind of connection, a matter of just stumbling into something by fate. I was working with a group of artists and musicians in the area, and there was a dancer percussionist named Damon Honeycutt, and he told me, hey, I'm working down at the Charter Oak Cultural Center, and there's a guy teaching tabla down there for free.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Okay.
I'm in.
Yeah, exactly. This takes that long to figure
why not?
out. Yeah, okay.
I would.
I'll be there next Sunday at 9 a.m. or whatever it was. And
wait, it's 9 a.m? I wouldn't have done it. I would have watched. That would have been the end of that.
Yeah. So we went down, and they were doing Indian Kathak dancing. They were teaching upstairs. The teacher, Rachna Agrawal, was teaching Kathak dancing, and this Sumatra Banerjee was the doctor. He's a doctor, and his daughter was taking dancing, and he was and he was a tabla player. He had loved music, and he had started very late in life himself when it came to music, but he had studied tabla. And so he was teaching free classes in the basement, and I just was like a sponge to that stuff.
Whoa.
I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm forever grateful for his generosity and his kindness, and he didn't know me from Adam, and just sure you want to play tabla? That's all he needed to know.
Was there how many people were in the class?
Maybe like 6 to 8 people each week, something like that. Small group in a small room, and that was my first exposure. Trying to unravel that whole mystery of like Indian drumming and Indian percussion. And then through, I got to work with Rachna as she was a dancer. And I actually ended up performing with her I was playing just percussion, hand drums and things. We started working together more professionally. And through her, I met same last name, but a different person, the Banerjee, Shubhankar Banerjee, who was an absolute master, tabla player, world-renowned master. He'd come through the area with.
Now you're ready for the next level.
So I was studying with him privately when he would come through the area. He just passed away just this past year.
Oh wow!
Another COVID.
Boy.
And he was younger than me. I mean, he's a few years younger than me. Just tragic. But he was absolutely a world-class tabla player. And so I would study private with him to sit across from someone like that, like just a couple feet away.
Crazy.
Again, just seeing and being that close. It's like going back to the Dennis Chambers, Vinny Colaiuta things.
Yeah, right.
That close to someone that's so amazing. It's more than just what's spoken or what's taught.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How long did you do that?
That was probably spanned couple years, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, something like that. Just to,
Wow.
when he was, they
Yeah.
toured a lot here. So whenever he'd come to the States, I'd usually get to hook up with him.
How long did it take for you to get a certain level of? It's like anything; it never ends.
Right, for sure. When
When did you feel like, okay?
I mean, I'm still very much at that stumbling kind of level, to be honest. But
it's a whole different musical system.
Yeah, there was a lot to unravel. So it took me at least a few years, I guess, to kind of make sense of it and try to getting the proper sounds and techniques and that started overlapping with. So the tabla is a North Indian music instrument.
Okay.
And then South India has a separate. There's a lot of similarities, differences. A more older traditional music system stemming from South India, which uses the mridangam, which is a horizontal double-headed drum, and the kanjira, which I fell in love with. It's a small little. You can describe it as a tambourine, but it's a small, maybe 10-inch or so drum with one jingle on it. A single-headed drum, one jingle on it, and it's played with with a monitor lizard skin, and made out of jackwood. This little round drum, and you wet the drum, dampening water inside to drop the pitch. You're doing these pitch bendings. You can drop, so you're constantly having to add water, sprinkling water on the inside of the drum head to drop the pitch. So it's nice and loose. So you can do these pitch bends with this one jingle. And that's an instrument I totally fell in love with, the kanjira, the South Indian.
I don't even know what that is.
It's
so cool.
When it's in the hands of a master, it's an extraordinarily powerful and expressive instrument. And so I started seeking out kanjira, and searching online, like how can I find out more about this? And I stumble upon this name, David P. Nelson. Turns out he teaches at Wesleyan. Like this, I'm like, well, I know where that is.
Yeah.
So get in touch with David Nelson and started studying with him.
Wow.
Different techniques, and he teaches just, if you're doing his rhythmic system, he's teaching all just vocalizations. There's no playing for the first year. It's just all learning the rhythmic system, which is the way he teaches at Wesleyan. So I was actually going up. He lived in Northampton. I was driving up to Northampton, studying with him privately there. I think that was probably because it was in the summer, and then coming down, study with him at Wesleyan. And I did that for also a few years and got to appear the timing was just right. I was lucky enough to get to appear in one of his books. He put out an educational book on the South Indian system, and I got to perform one of these, it's called Solkatu, is the vocalization rhythmic system that they teach, that everyone learns. So drummers, dancers, all the musicians, they all learn the same rhythmic system. So they're all speaking the same language to each other rhythmically. And I got to perform a duet with him on a DVD that accompanies his book on the South Indian rhythm system. So
that's cool.
So that's
pretty wild.
Yeah,
and you're still ongoing with that.
Not studying,
not
but
at the moment.
Yeah, not. I haven't studied with David in a long time. Okay. But
you feel satisfied that you followed it.
Oh yeah,
far enough to kind of at least satisfy your curiosity.
Absolutely, yeah. Getting a kind of understanding of it. Perhaps I'm not sure it was the smartest thing to do is I was overlapping my tabla and kanjira studies. So this North Indian and South Indian system that have similarities but differences. It was frying my brain.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a lot.
Frying my brain, and then to bring it back to the rudimental thing, then I went back to my rudimental roots and reconnected with Jim Clark, who's a local drummer, who runs the Connecticut Valley Field Music, a traditional fife and drum corps. Okay. Just not far up the road. And Jim's another guy I knew from Creative. He's my customer there, and I think it's safe to say that Jim is one of the foremost experts in the world on traditional rudimental drumming, and just amazingly musical, brilliant player himself. And I learned so much from him. And that took me to a whole nother level on technique. And even though I'd been immersed in drum corps and rudimental drumming my whole life, learning and playing and studying with Jim was just took it to a whole.
You have a knack for meeting the right people at the right time.
And that was the most recent. I mean, that goes down. I guess that was probably 10 years ago or so when I reconnected with Jim. But it was kind of going back to my roots, but also
I wonder what's next.
Accelerating.
What's next? We don't know.
Well,
we don't know.
That's a whole nother discussion.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Wow. Are you ready for the weird wrap up question?
Yeah, man.
All right. I'm not going to ask you if you're a consistent practicer of your instrument, because clearly you are. Skip that one. I asked that because I don't know why. Some people do, some people don't. I find it interesting.
Yeah.
Desert Island albums, a few that could define you.
Ooh, the Patrick Moraz. It's no. I don't think it's. I think it's Untitled, but it's generally referred to as the I album.
Okay.
Andy Newmark plays on one side. Alphonse Mouzon plays on the other side.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I'll have to hit you up.
Brilliant record.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That would be at the top for sure.
All right. Yeah, I've never heard it, so I'm ready.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
One food item or type of food that you could eat every day that you just go, I'd be fine if this was all that there was.
Is when you said that, for some reason, like pad thai popped into my mind.
Sure.
But I don't know why I said that.
Because that's your answer. That's why.
But in reality, what I do eat every day is more like chicken and vegetables. It's like that.
Yeah.
I do sustain myself on that, so that works. But
sometimes I always have that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm like that. Of like, well, I'm like this with music too. Like I get into genres. I just go, that's it. I'm a bluegrass person from now on. And then the next thing, no, I'm a dance music person. I'm a metal person. Like I always feel like I have to commit to the thing. And that's with food. I just go, this is my thing, and then until the next thing.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's cool.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with yourself now, briefly, that we should know about? Anything?
Yeah. So, I could go on and on. So my, what I've been fully immersed and kind of fully committed to creatively and musically has been like the world of online streaming, which is a completely like just parallel universe.
Okay.
And I only discovered a couple years ago myself. That started with, I think a lot of people were doing like Facebook live streaming.
Yep.
When YouTube started facilitating that, people were doing live streaming of YouTube. So there's other communities, primarily like the Twitch community. I'm not even familiar if you're familiar with the platform. Yeah. So that's a community that came originally from the gamer community. So people were online and sharing things and live interaction that spilled over into the music community. And I've been really immersed in that, and it's like a parallel universe.
Wow.
The amount of talent that's going on, and it's international. So I can. There was a period of time where I was barely listening to music at all. Now it's not unusual for me to have like live music streaming 24, 36 hours straight. Because all over the world, I follow people in Australia, in Japan, in Russia, in the UK, across all the time zones in the US.
You're like up to the minute.
There's always somebody, there's always somebody doing something at all these time zones.
Great.
And there's live interactions through chat sessions. I'm a moderator for a couple of artists. I've been doing guest appearances on other people's streams. It's just a whole, I could go on and on and on, that's a whole, it's like a parallel universe that I just stumbled into, and to see like how developed it was and how extraordinarily multi-talented so many people are out there. That's been, it's been a rebirth. It's been a musical
that's cool.
and creative rebirth that I'm still exploring.
Right.
And getting to know.
That's a better story than the old days and how it used to be and what it isn't.
Yeah.
I like hearing that.
And that really exploded from the pandemic. There was already some of this technology in place, but the pandemic hit and people were cooped up at home. Performers couldn't perform.
Right.
Audiences couldn't be entertained. And all of a sudden, that was just the fuel on the fire. This whole platform just exploded.
And who knows what'll happen.
I've got to witness that over the last year and a half, 2 years.
That's cool.
So I'm trying to ride that wave.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it. Geoff Brown, a man who knows what he's doing. I was saying that's what I like about Jeff is he doesn't fool around with things. He does them. If he knows what he knows.
And we didn't even talk about the electronics or anything.
I know. Well, you'll have to come back.
All right.
You'll have to come back.
Yeah.
Theoretically, keep this in mind. I'm going to keep saying this until we actually have to force to do it. But we're going to have, round 2, and there's going to be drum kits.
Okay.
And then we can kind of get into it and talk so that you're on the list. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
Geoff Brown, old friend of mine, great drummer.
Yeah.
Knows what he's doing. A man of many and varied interests. Always interesting to hear what you're doing. It always is.
Thank you to have me on. It's been a blast.
Of course. Thanks for being here. I hope this is the right button. Here's the other one. There's the other theme. There's Dave's theme. We're going to go out with this one. Hey, it's the Jon Peckman podcast. Thanks for listening. Coming to you from beautiful downtown Portland, Connecticut. Go over the bridge, take a left at the... Anyway, this is Jon Peckman podcast. How you doing? Thanks for listening. Geoff Brown was our guest today. Look for us everywhere. Anywhere that you can hear a podcast. We're working on the live thing. That'll come next. Geoff Brown, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Drive safe back over that bridge. All right, kids, we'll see you next time. That is all.
If you'd like to start your own podcast, give us a call at Connecticut Valley School of Music and Dance. Our professionally designed podcast space is here for all your recording needs. Rent out our studio to do interviews with up to 4 people, to record audiobooks, social media content, and all other recorded material. Our rentals include a private studio along with our professional-grade podcasting equipment, and we can customize your output to whatever your needs are. We also have green screen capabilities, which will expand to video capability if you so wish. So check us out here at ConnValley.net/podcast.